Let's discuss the wildlife tax valuation in Texas. It's often referred to as wildlife management use. In addition, it's commonly and incorrectly referred to as a wildlife exemption. Whatever you call it, it's a great deal for Texas landowners and native wildlife. In 1995, Texas voters approved Proposition 11, which amended Article 8, Section 1D1 of the Texas Constitution to permit agricultural appraisal for land used to manage wildlife. House Bill 1358 implemented the constitutional amendment by making wildlife management an agricultural use that qualifies the land for agricultural appraisal. The Texas Tax Code addresses the requirements for landowners to qualify their land for agricultural appraisal and also instructs county appraisal districts in how to appraise qualified agricultural land. Land used for wildlife management must meet all the legal requirements of land qualified for agricultural appraisal. The Texas Comptroller publishes a manual for the appraisal of agricultural land that discusses in detail the qualification of land for agricultural appraisal, the rollback tax penalty for change of use, and appraisal of agricultural land. There is a link to the document in the notes below. Let's discuss the requirements for wildlife tax valuation. Land on which the owner engages in active wildlife management and that meets other requirements for agricultural appraisal is qualified for agricultural appraisal and use. This allows landowners that convert traditional agricultural or timber lands to wildlife management to maintain the same tax rate on their land. Agricultural land used for wildlife management is often referred to as land in wildlife management use. People also refer to wildlife management use as wildlife tax valuation or, incorrectly, a wildlife exemption. Wildlife management use does not actually exempt landowners from property tax. Wildlife management use does maintain the low tax rate. There are specific requirements to convert land to wildlife management use or wildlife tax valuation. First and foremost, land must have a current timber or agricultural tax valuation. This is land that is currently and principally devoted to agricultural use to the degree of intensity typical for the area and has been used for agriculture or timber for at least 5 of the preceding 7 years. The land must have been qualified and appraised as agricultural land during the year before the year the owner changes to the wildlife management use. For example, an owner who wishes to qualify for wildlife management use in 2023 must be able to show the land was qualified for and appraised as agricultural land in 2022. In addition, another requirement for wildlife management use is that the land must be managed to propagate a sustaining breeding, migrating, or wintering population of native wild animals. Native wildlife includes all common wildlife as well as invertebrates. Songbirds, doves, bats, owls, rabbits, and deer can qualify if they make sense for the property. So do insects, including pollinating insects such as bees and butterflies. The management of exotic animals, including European honeybees, cannot be used to maintain a wildlife tax valuation on land. The Texas Tax Code clearly defines wildlife management as actively using land to propagate a sustaining breeding, migrating, or wintering population of native wild animals for human use, including food, medicine, or recreation. In short, if landowners qualify if they are managing their land for wildlife for any reason. However, Texas landowners must implement at least 3 of 7 management practices on their land annually. The practices include habitat control, erosion control, predator control, providing supplemental supplies of water, providing supplemental supplies of food, providing shelters, and making census counts to determine populations. Each of these practices has a variety of wildlife and habitat management activities that can be carried out on the land. Land can qualify for wildlife tax valuation if it is instrumental in supporting a sustaining breeding, migrating, or wintering population. A group of animals need not live on the land at all times, provided they regularly migrate across it or live there seasonally. A sustained breeding population is a group of native wild animals that is large enough to live independently over several generations. This definition implies that the population will not die out because it produces enough animals to continue as a viable group. We can provide information to help determine the number of animals of a particular species that must group together to sustain the population. A migrating population of native wild animals is a group of animals moving between seasonal ranges. A wintering population of native wild animals is a group of animals living on its winter range. Again, landowners can manage for species that live on their property year-round or species that are only found there seasonally. Property size is important in determining the wildlife species that are appropriate for management. Under Texas law, a landowner must perform at least 3 of 7 wildlife management activities on the land annually. An owner may qualify by doing more than 3 practices but may not engage in fewer than 3 of the activities. Let's talk about the 7 major practices. 1. Habitat control. A wild animal's habitat is its surroundings as a whole, including plants, ground cover, and shelter. Habitat control or habitat management means purposefully using the land to create or promote an environment that is beneficial to wildlife. This practice includes annual activities such as brush management, range enhancement, and prescribed burning to improve the land and the habitat. 2. Erosion control. Any active practice that attempts to reduce or keep soil erosion to a minimum for the benefit of wildlife is erosion control. Activities include pond construction and plant establishment on hillsides or along adjacent creeks and rivers. 3. Predator management. This term means practices intended to manage the population of predators to the landowner's target wildlife population. Predator control is usually not necessary unless the number of predators is harmful to the desired wildlife population. Common activities are the trapping of wild hogs and controlling red imported fire ants. 4. Providing supplemental supplies of water. Natural water exists in all wildlife environments. Supplemental water is provided when the owner actively provides water in addition to the natural sources. Activities include adding troughs on a water supply, installing rainwater collection systems or guzzlers for wildlife, and the construction of wetlands. 5. Providing supplemental supplies of food. Most wildlife environments have some natural food. An owner supplies supplemental food by providing food or nutrition in addition to the level naturally produced on the land. Activities include appropriate types of feeders, food plots, and the overseeding of areas with native seeds to increase forage for wildlife of interest. 6. Providing shelter. This term means actively creating or maintaining vegetation or artificial structures that provide shelter from the weather, nesting and breeding sites, or hiding cover from enemies. Activities include the addition of nesting boxes, roosting boxes, brush piles, and the deferment of mowing and grazing of grasslands. 7. Making census counts to determine population. Counts are periodic surveys and inventories to determine the number, composition, or other relevant information about a wildlife population to measure if the current wildlife management practices are serving the targeted species. Activities include bird point counts, deer surveys, pollinator transects, and other accepted survey methods. Many of the activities must take place at the appropriate scale, which is based on the wildlife appraisal region in which the property is located and the size of the property. These activities must be clearly spelled out in a wildlife management plan and filed with the county appraisal district at the time when the land is converted from traditional agricultural use to wildlife management use. A landowner must provide a detailed wildlife management plan to the county appraisal district. The plan must cover each tract for which wildlife management use qualification is sought. Again, the activities and practices contained in the plan must be consistent with the activities and practices appropriate for the region in which the property is located. Activities must also meet or exceed requirements for the property's size and be suitable for the region as well as the wildlife targeted for management. This concludes our overview of the wildlife tax valuation in Texas. Please contact us for assistance or feel free to ask questions in the comments below. Thank you.